I'm a substitute teacher in rural Omaha, and I didn't start walking through the field to be adventurous. It was just a shortcut, 10 minutes shaved off my drive home after long days. Behind the elementary school, there's a sagging fence, and if you duck under it, you can cut straight through the corn and end up in a parking space near the county road. Teachers called it the Teacher's Alley. Everyone used it. Everything looked perfect that afternoon. It was the kind of evening that made you drop your guard, and that's exactly when things happen. The final bell had just rung. I waved to the secretary, tossed my mug in the sink, and stepped outside. I slipped under the fence like always. I'd made it maybe 30 feet in when I saw the first thing lying in the dirt. A kid's notebook, half buried, pink cover smeared with dust. I picked it up without thinking. Inside was a name written in fat pencil letters, Laura, with a heart beside it. I smiled. Probably dropped during recess, I thought, even though recess was on the opposite side of the building. I placed it on top of a stalk and kept walking. Then came a purple crayon, perfectly clean. Then a jump rope, coiled like someone had set it down. A few steps later, a single child's sneaker, small, worn, dusty inside, as if it had been there for a while. I stopped. The only sound was the dry hiss of leaves against each other. At first, I told myself it was just random litter. But the items kept appearing, one after another. A name tag clipped to a string, a little plastic dinosaur, a headband with glitter stars. And they weren't scattered. They formed a path. That's when I noticed the trail itself. The dirt wasn't smooth anymore. It showed overlapping footprints. Small ones, mixed with drag lines like something had been pulled. The sound of a soft bell came through the rows, not the big school bell. Tiny, a single tink. It repeated once, just ahead of me. That should have been my cue to turn around, but I thought maybe kids were out here, and as a teacher, you don't ignore something that could be a student in trouble. I pulled out my phone to text the front office, but there was no signal, so I pushed deeper in. The path curved with the rows, and the corn blocked more light. Every few steps, I'd find another item. Chalk pieces, a small backpack, zipper pull, an empty juice pouch. The bell tinkled again, this time from the right side. Then the rows opened up. There was a clearing, maybe 20 feet wide. The ground was trampled flat, and everything I'd been seeing was here. Piles of notebooks, crayons, toys, all carefully arranged inside a circle. For a few seconds, I just stood there, too confused to move. It looked like a classroom display someone had built out of lost property, except the notebooks had first names on them. Some from our school, some with stickers from other schools nearby, and the years on them weren't all recent. I crouched to take a look at the pile. There was Jaden written with a backward D, Mia with a star, Noah with a shark doodle. I didn't touch anything else, just dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher asked. I'm behind West Elm Elementary. I found something strange in the cornfield. It's like a clearing full of kids' stuff. I don't know what this is. Are you alone? She asked. Yes, I said. I don't see anyone. Okay, stay on the line. Back out the way you came. Officers are en route. I turned, flashlight in my hand. That's when I noticed the thin lines stretched between some stalks. Twine, waist high, running across the path, tight enough that a running kid would hit it and go down hard. My heart sank a bit. I think someone set traps, I told the dispatcher. Sir, please step away, she said. I moved carefully, placing my feet inside my old footprints. Then I froze, not because I wanted to, but because the bell rang again. 2 pings, like someone testing if I'd respond. I didn't move. A stalk somewhere ahead of me swayed once, then stilled. The dispatcher's voice broke the silence. Sir, are you there? Yeah, I whispered. I think there's someone out here. I didn't wait for her reply. I kept walking backward until the chain link fence came into view, ducked under, and walked fast toward the parking lot. My pulse wasn't fast, just firm, like my system was holding back a flood. Within minutes, 2 cruisers pulled onto the gravel access road. One deputy I'd seen before stepped out. "You the one who called it in?" I nodded and pointed toward the gap. "It's back there. I didn't touch anything." He and another officer ducked under the fence, with their flashlights cutting through the rows. I stayed by the cruiser, arms crossed, trying to ignore how quiet everything was again. When they came back, the sergeant's expression had shifted from curiosity to something else. Recognition, maybe. "We've been looking for this place," he said. He told me they found ropes, old candy wrappers, several more piles like the one I'd seen. Then he radioed someone and said, "We'll need detectives out here, and notify child services." That's when it hit me. This wasn't some random dump site. The sergeant didn't say much else, just thanked me and asked me to wait while they took photos. When he came back again, I asked, "What do you think it is?" "It's not new," he said, "but it's not old enough to be history either." That's not the kind of answer that lets you sleep at night. They took my statement under a parking lot light. I told them how long I'd been cutting through, how I found the notebook first when I heard the bell. The sergeant told me not to go near the field again, not to tell anyone yet. We don't want rumors before we know what we're looking at. The next day, yellow tape went up over the fence gap. Teachers whispered in the lounge. The principal called me into her office and thanked me for reporting it. Then, she said something that made me stop breathing for a second. There have been reports, people near the fields after practice, asking kids weird questions. We've had patrols, but nothing ever stuck. Maybe this connects. The farmland behind the school wasn't even owned by the district. It belonged to an older farmer who'd passed away the year before. His relatives hadn't done anything with it yet, so the land sat unmonitored. Perfect for hiding something. Later that week, I saw investigators marking the ground with flags. From the parking lot, I could see little orange tags waving in the wind. One near the clearing, another by the twine traps. Someone flew a drone overhead to photograph the layout. When the story broke in the local paper, it was small. Unusual items found near school. No details. No mention of the circle. The sheriff's office called it ongoing. But one deputy told me quietly that the notebooks matched missing property reports from several schools. A few names even linked to children who had disappeared years ago, but were later found safe, miles away. No one knew what tied them here. That night, I couldn't get the image of that clearing out of my head. The circle, the toys, the names. About a week later, harvest season started. Big combines chewed through the corn, flattening everything. I thought seeing the field open again would bring relief. It didn't. The emptiness just made it worse. The school put up new fencing and signs, "Do not enter, private property." Parents asked questions during pickup, but no one had answers. I kept teaching, but my routines changed. I parked out front always. I stopped walking anywhere near that side of the building. Still, sometimes during recess, I'd catch myself looking toward the fence. A few days later, detectives called me in again. They asked if I recognized any of the names from the notebooks. I gave them a few. They asked if I'd ever noticed anyone near the field in the afternoons. I hadn't, except a few parents cutting across to the lot. When I asked if they'd found anything else, they just said it's an active investigation. Weeks went by. The police presence faded. The field got plowed over for winter. People stopped talking about it. But I couldn't. I still work in schools, different district now. And every fall, when the air smells like dry corn and the first recess bell rings, that same small sound flickers in my memory. The bell in the field. People always assume the scariest part of teaching out in the country is being underfunded or overworked. But what gets you is how close the unknown can hide beside the ordinary, right next to where kids laugh and learn and think they're safe. The detectives never told me who set that trap or when. The land got sold to some cousins who built storage silos on it. The circle's gone, the evidence logged away somewhere. But that doesn't mean it's over. My name's Sarah, and I work as an agricultural inspector for the state of Texas. I've seen a lot of strange farms, but nothing could have prepared me for what I walked into that night. Farm visits aren't supposed to be interesting. They're checklists. Records, samples, quick signatures, and back on the road. I'd done hundreds. This one outside Amarillo, Texas, should have been the same. It was late October 2021. Flat land, endless sky, and wind strong enough to make the stalks be heard from the road. I pulled off the main road onto a Kalashi lane that cut through miles of corn. Amarillo shimmered far behind me like a mirage. Ahead sat a small farmhouse, a few barns, and a rusty sign that had lost its paint years ago. The owner, a man named Cole, stepped out wiping his hands on a rag. Middle-aged, solid build, trucker tan. He smiled like someone who didn't trust smiles. "You must be Alvarez," he said. "Yep, State Ag Department." We shook hands. His skin was rough, the kind that told the truth about how he spent his days. He showed me yield logs and pesticide records. Everything clean, organized just as it should be. I checked storage tanks and fertilizer drums. All legal. No reason to be uneasy. Then he said, "My workers already left for the season. Just me now." "All right," I said, scanning the field. "Mind if I take a few soil cores from the south section?" "Go ahead. Stay to the lanes. Easier walking." The sun was dropping fast when I stepped into the first row. The corn was tall and dry. I'd been doing this job for years, so I recognized when something didn't fit. Boot prints. Fresh ones. They led away from the barns and curved toward the middle of the field. "You sure everyone's gone?" I called. "Yeah, they finished earlier," he said. I crouched. The prints weren't from one person. At least 3 pairs, maybe 4. "Strange. Tracks look recent." He shrugged. "Probably hunters." Then he walked ahead like he didn't want to linger. We reached the replant section where the soil changed color. I pulled a small probe from my bag to take samples, and that's when I noticed that the wind carried something strange. Something like soft voices, repeating like a chant. "Do you hear that?" I asked. Cole stopped, his eyes narrow. "Just the highway." "The highway's a mile away," I said. It came again. A rising, falling pattern. Not words I could catch, but not random either. Voices. Several of them. He looked at me for a moment, then said, "Stay on the path," and he walked back toward the barns. I waited until he was gone, then followed the direction of the sound. It was coming from deeper in, maybe a few hundred yards. I shut off my flashlight and pushed between rows, careful where I stepped. The smell changed. Not earth and stalks anymore. Something burnt like wax and hair. I crouched automatically, moving low. Ahead, faint orange light flickered between the stems. I reached a small opening and froze. There was a clearing carved right into the middle of the field. A wide circle of bare soil surrounded by towering corn walls. In the center stood a dozen people. Maybe more. Their faces were half hidden by hoods or bandanas. They weren't kids messing around. These were adults, men and women standing in formation, chanting in perfect rhythm. The words slipped between Spanish and something older. I recognized only one word repeated again and again: cosecha, harvest. A man in a brown jacket stood at the center. Back to me, hands raised. On the ground in front of him lay something dark and still. For a moment, I thought it was a pile of sacks. Then I saw the hoof. It was an animal. A goat, maybe. The ground around it was blackened, soaked. Two women knelt and poured liquid from glass jars, tracing lines in the dirt. My brain tried to find logic. Maybe a cultural ceremony, a seasonal blessing? But the longer I watched, the clearer it became. This wasn't anything meant for daylight. Then everything stopped. The leader turned slightly and looked toward my side of the field. Not at me, but close enough. He said something short. The others went silent. A man's voice followed. "Kien anda ahi? Who's there?" I dropped low. My radio clicked softly against my belt. The sound was tiny, but in that silence it might as well have been a gunshot. Another voice answered from the circle. Lower, angry. That's when instinct took over. I backed up, then ran. Running through corn is chaos. Every row feels endless. Every sound felt too close. The stalks whipped against my arms, snagged my jacket, caught my hair. I kept running until I broke through into the open lane, breathing hard. Behind me, someone shouted again. A voice, male, young, furious. My radio slipped off my belt and fell to the ground. I didn't stop. I ran all the way to the truck. Cole was standing near the combine. "Everything all right?" he asked. I stopped several feet away. "There are people in your field." He didn't even look surprised. "You don't want to go looking at night," he said. "What are they doing out there?" He paused. "Harvest ritual. Been here longer than the paperwork. Best not to interrupt." I got in my truck, locked the doors, and drove down the lane until I hit the main road before calling 911. 3 sheriff's units met me 20 minutes later. They drove back up with spotlights sweeping the rows. I stayed behind, watching the beams flicker through the corn. Eventually, one deputy came back. "Found scorch marks and bones," he said. "Small animal. No people." "There were at least 12 of them," I said. He gave me that tight smile cops use when they've already decided on the report. "Probably kids. Happens every year." He took my statement anyway, writing nothing down that mattered. 3 days later, I got an email from the department. Investigation closed. No evidence of criminal activity. The report called it possible ceremonial burn, unauthorized. The rest was bureaucratic filler. But what got me was the last line. Owner claims no knowledge of incident. Field now harvested. I printed it and filed it. 2 weeks later, I had to return for a missing signature. I didn't want to, but protocol is protocol. Cole was waiting by the barn, pen in hand. "Need me to show you around again?" he asked. "No," I said, "just this form." He signed, nodded once, and walked away. That's when I saw something wedged under my windshield wiper. A small square of folded paper. Inside, written in pencil, "The land takes what you give it." No signature. Just corn dust smeared along the edge. I didn't report it. What would I say? Instead, I finished my route and avoided that part of Amarillo for the rest of the season. But it didn't end there. Months later, during another inspection, I heard the same rhythm. 3 syllables, whispered in unison, from a worker humming while stacking crates. Harmless, maybe, but my stomach tightened. I asked, "Hey, what's that song?" He blinked like he didn't realize he'd been humming. "What song?" That night, I dreamed of torchlight flickering off corn leaves and voices cutting off mid-chant. I woke up to the sound of my own breath catching, like I'd been holding it the whole time. Since then, I still do my rounds, but I don't enter fields after dusk. I announce myself out loud when I start an inspection, and I never ever ignore when the wind sounds like voices. Most of the unsettling things in my line of work don't scream for attention. They just sit there, quiet. A single plate in a sink, a light left on in an empty room, a door locked from the outside. I'm a county social worker in western Iowa. The cases are mostly dull. Neglected farms, forgotten kids, hoarders who think they're fine. But one Tuesday, I got a call that stuck with me. Possible child at risk, the dispatcher said. Neighbors report a little one running through the corn off County Road D. Property's vacant. Haver's place. That farm had been foreclosed for years. The roof sagged, windows filmed over from inside. Still, two separate people, an old man and a bus driver, claimed to have seen a child. Around dusk, always alone. I drove out late afternoon. The sun was already dropping behind the fields. The gravel road stretched straight, fences giving way to miles of corn. The Havers farmhouse looked as tired as I remembered. Porch sinking, screen door hanging open. A plastic kiddie pool lay flipped over near the steps. I parked by the windbreak, shut off the engine, and listened. Crickets. A crow somewhere to my right. Wind brushing dry stalks. No human noise. I grabbed my badge, flashlight, and a file folder. The folder held foreclosure records, past inspection notes, and the new complaint. Routine stuff, except for the part that mentioned giggles in the corn. I stepped into the yard. The field started right behind the house, rows stretching endless. Whoever was planting it now only did the bare minimum, enough to keep the soil from turning wild. When I stepped in, the first thing I saw was a toy soldier tied with twine to a stalk. He wasn't dropped, he was placed, facing east toward the road. I crouched. The twine was weathered but strong. Someone had done this recently. "Hello?" I called. "I'm with the county. You're not in trouble." Nothing, just the sound of leaves moving. I stepped into the first row, phone flashlight in hand, moving through the green shadows. 10 feet in, another toy, an old matchbox car tied at eye level. Tied the same way, facing the road. I texted dispatch my location. Evidence of possible child presence. Entering field. The farther I went, the tighter the rows grew. The light dimmed to a green haze. Every direction looked the same. Then came the laugh. Short, high-pitched, and close. "Sweetie," I called softly. "I'm with the county. It's okay." No answer. I walked another few steps. A smell drifted up. Sickly sweet, like bubblegum. I spotted a foil gum wrapper nearby, clean and new. I stood slowly. "If you can hear me," I said, "you're safe. I just want to help." The laugh came again. Faint, farther away now. That sinking feeling hit sharp and cold. I reached for my radio. Dead battery. My phone flickered with one bar. I typed, requesting backup. Possible child in field. Returning to lane. The message sent. Barely. I pushed through the rows until the open air hit me again. Gravel underfoot never sounded so good. Across the lane, an old man stood near his mailbox. Faded cap, lined face. He gave me a look like he'd been waiting. "You the county lady?" "Yeah, you the one who called?" "Twice," he said. "Didn't want to waste your time, but I know what I saw. Kid running in the rows. Too small to be a prank." "You see anyone today?" He shook his head. "Not since the weekend. But the toys, those weren't there before." A patrol car rumbled up. Deputy Vaughn, young, polite, already jaded. He listened, walked the first few rows with me, and scribbled notes. "Want a search team?" he asked. "If you can get one." "They're busy. I'll swing back around dusk." That's when the reports came in. He nodded and left. I told myself to make one more pass along the perimeter before dark. I saw, half buried in a rut, a Tonka dump truck. Bright yellow plastic, spotless. I crouched. No twine this time. Just placed there, like someone wanted me to see it. "Hey there," I said gently. "You want to come out?" I brought snacks. The corn rustled once, faint, maybe 2 rows in, then stillness. I set a bottle of water beside the truck. If you want it, it's yours. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of that handprint, that bubblegum smell. The next day was busy. Intake meetings, home visits. But around 5, I drove back. I needed to know. The field looked unchanged. Something sat on the Havers mailbox. A toy soldier. Clean, unscuffed, like it came straight from a store shelf. Facing east toward the road. I picked it up. No dust, no marks, just a plastic soldier standing at attention. I didn't call it in. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to hold one piece of proof that wasn't going to be explained away as kids messing around. I put him on my dashboard and drove home. 2 weeks later, harvest came. The management company sent a crew with a combine and stripped the whole field in a day. The rows vanished. What had felt like a maze was now an open plain of stubble. We closed the case. The official note read, "Unfounded concern. No evidence of neglect or habitation." But I still couldn't shake the image of that small hand pressed into dirt. I kept the toy soldier. He sits now on my kitchen windowsill beside a stubborn houseplant. I don't know why I need him there, but I do. When I wash dishes at night, I catch myself looking at him. I think of the tied toys, the missing laughter, and that smell of gum that shouldn't still linger. I've told the story to a few people. Never the supernatural version, just the facts. Toys tied to stalks, child's laugh, one handprint, all toys gone, soldier at the mailbox. That's enough to haunt anyone. You ever crave the kind of quiet that feels almost too big, where it's just wind, bugs, and the sound of your own breath? That's what I wanted back in 2017, when I decided to crash at my buddy Evan's family farm outside Topeka for a while. I dropped out of college, said I just needed a break, but really, I was lost. Evan's folks didn't mind me camping behind their cornfields. It was harvest season. Nights were still warm, and the fields glowed gold every evening. I set up a little 2-man tent by the hedgerow, far enough from the house that I could pretend I was alone, but close enough to run for cover if a storm rolled in. My nights were easy. Fire, cheap beer, and stars so clear you could count satellites. Evan would stop by on weekends, bringing a cooler and stories from campus. But that Tuesday, it was just me. He texted that he'd be late. I didn't care. I liked the silence. I cooked canned chili on the fire and watched sparks drift up into the dark. Around midnight, I crawled into the tent and passed out to the sound of crickets. What woke me wasn't thunder or a coyote. It was footsteps. Slow, heavy. Then another pair. Lighter, keeping pace. I thought it was deer. That made sense. Until I heard whispering. The voices were low, male. I couldn't catch words, just the tone. Practical, focused. The kind of whisper you hear when people are planning something, not talking. I slid my phone out of my sleeping bag. 1:58 a.m. Battery full signal. A text from Evan an hour old. "You good? Finishing late." I typed back, "Someone's out here," then erased it. My brain didn't want to believe it yet. The crunching grew closer. I unzipped the tent an inch and pressed my eye to the gap. 2 men, moving between the corn rows. One held a long hunting knife, the other had something smaller, maybe a box cutter. Their jackets and caps were dark, no flashlights, no gear. They weren't hunting. They were looking. I let go of the zipper, praying the sound hadn't carried. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it would shake the tent itself. The taller guy stopped, turned his head slightly like he'd heard something, then lifted 2 fingers and gestured sideways, spread out. That was the moment I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. I pulled my phone under the bag and dialed Evan. Straight to voicemail. Then I tried the sheriff's number, half remembered from the magnet on the farmhouse fridge, but I didn't make it to the second digit. "You checked the bag," one of them whispered. The bag. My duffel. It sat just outside the tent flap. My throat locked. I heard them kneel. Zippers. One of them grunted. Then the fire outside cracked, one sharp pop from collapsing wood, and both men turned toward it. That single second of distraction was all I was going to get. I ripped the zipper open, crawled out barefoot, and sprinted. The cold ground bit at my feet. A boot tipped over behind me, thudding against the other. That tiny sound, my own damn mistake, seemed to echo through the clearing. I didn't look back. The corn tore at my legs as I ran. My car waited 20 feet away, parked crooked in the grass. I remembered I'd left my keys in the side pocket of my pants, which I'd tossed onto the passenger seat before bed. I yanked the handle. Open. Thank God. I dove in, reached across the seat, and clawed at the pants until my fingers hit metal. The driver's side window went thunk. The tall man stood there, knife gone, just his palm flat against the glass. Then, 2 slow knocks with his knuckles. He leaned down until his face filled the window. I could see his teeth when he smiled. He said something I couldn't hear through the glass, calm, almost conversational. Another shape appeared at the back of the car, the shorter guy. He carried the box cutter, flipping the blade in and out. I jammed the key into the ignition and started the engine. Neither of them moved. I threw it in reverse, tires spinning, kicking gravel. The shorter man stepped toward the car, keeping pace for a few steps before stopping dead. The taller one kept staring as if memorizing me. I didn't stop to process that. I gunned it down the dirt lane. I called 911. My voice shook so bad I had to start over twice. 2 men, at a tent, outside Topeka, knives. I'm heading to the ranger station. Stay on the line, the dispatcher said. What's your location? I gave directions I barely remembered, still watching the rearview mirror for headlights that never came. By the time I pulled into the ranger station lot, my legs had gone numb. The ranger on duty came out, took one look at me, and led me inside without a word. I told him everything while he called the sheriff's office. My hands shook so hard I spilled half the water he gave me. A deputy showed up maybe 20 minutes later. He asked me to tell it again, slower this time. He radioed his partner, who was already heading to the farm. When he got an update, he looked at me before saying it out loud. Your friend's there now. They're checking your camp. I waited, trying not to breathe too loud. The radio cracked. Tents open. Sleeping bag pulled out. 2 sets of prints, fire still burning. They're gone. Gone. The deputy looked at me like he wanted to reassure me, but couldn't find the words. You did the right thing, leaving. Evan called while I was still there. He was apologizing before I even said hello, kept saying he was sorry for not being there, for not checking my texts. He stayed on the phone until I heard another officer's car pull up outside. By dawn, they'd gone over the clearing. 2 sets of boot prints, both from work boots, and just an empty blister pack and a short plastic straw found near the fence. Poachers, the deputy said. Probably high, maybe thought your gear was worth something. I wanted to believe him. But the knives were clean. The prints were close. Too close for scavengers or thieves. They'd been looking for something specific. Evan and I went back after sunrise to pack up. My tent looked smaller in daylight, like it couldn't possibly hold the night that happened there. Evan's mom came out with coffee and that pale, shaky look people get when fear's worn off but confusion hasn't. She said maybe they were just after animals. I didn't argue. I slept on their couch that night. The dogs, usually kept outside, stayed in too. One at the door, one under the table. I remember thinking their steady breathing was the only thing keeping me calm. A few days later, the sheriff called. They'd found more knife marks on a fence post near the north field, clean edge tests like someone checking a blade's sharpness. No new leads, no arrests. That was it. Case closed. I left the next week, told Evan I'd come back once the corn was down, but I never did. I told myself it was just drugs, just unlucky timing. But that night rewired how I think about silence. It's funny, people always say the countryside's peaceful because you can see danger coming from miles away. They forget about the corn. It hides everything. It builds walls that move when the wind does. Out there, you can be 10 feet from someone and not know it until you hear them breathe. For a while, I kept trying to reason it out. Maybe they were poachers, maybe tweakers, maybe just two weirdos wandering. But no matter how I slice it, none of it fits. They didn't take anything. They didn't break anything. They just stood there, knives ready. I camp sometimes, but only in crowded places. Parks with lights, people, laughter. Noise feels safe now. The cops said they were poachers, but there were no animals. No tracks, just clean knives and two men walking between the rows. It's crazy how everything can go sideways in the space between one breath and the next. Driving nights make sense to me. Less traffic, no small talk, no porch dogs sprinting out of the dark. You just drive, deliver, move on. That night in October 2022, I was working the last leg of a rural Indiana route. Nothing unusual. The kind of roads that disappear into cornfields. The GPS was being its usual stubborn self, spinning the blue dot around like it was lost too. The last package on my manifest didn't even have a house number. Just a rural route and the note, use back entrance, look for sign on County 600, drive through field. I should have marked it undeliverable right there, but it was 1:30 a.m. and I wanted to finish. A few miles down, my headlights caught the sign. A handmade board, nailed into the ditch. Back entrance, delivery vans, okay. White paint, fresh enough to glow. It wasn't official. No reflectors, no tape, but dispatch had notes. So I turned in. The road wasn't a road. It was a narrow cut between corn rows, wide enough for one vehicle. My mirrors brushed the dry leaves on both sides, and every sound, the crunch of dirt, the low hum of the van, felt way too loud. The corn swallowed everything. No moon, no horizon. Just rows and my headlights carving a tunnel ahead. Then the field opened up. A small clearing, just big enough for another truck. And there it was. A rival carrier's van, engine off, hazard lights dark, but the driver door sat open. I stopped a few yards back. The air outside smelled faintly of coffee. The dome light in the other van glowed dim yellow, casting enough light to show a paper cup steaming on the passenger seat. The engine ticked softly, still warm. "Hello?" I called, like I was walking into an office instead of a cornfield. No answer. I stepped closer. The key sat in the ignition, turned to accessory. A half-eaten muffin on the dash. No phone. No driver. I circled around, phone flashlight pointed down. 2 sets of footprints. One heavy, one smaller. They walked side by side away from the truck, then split. The lighter prints continued straight, deeper into the corn. The heavier set looped back toward my van. That realization came in stages. 2 people were here. One had gone forward. The other had circled behind me. I turned around slow. My van sat 20 feet away, headlights still on, driver door open. My own footprints were clear. No others I could see, but the grass to the left of the path was bent, blades still pressed down. I listened. Nothing at first, then one faint hiss, a cornstalk brushing another. Not wind, something moving. I raised my voice. "Hey, I'm with the courier service. You need help?" Nothing. Just that sound again. Closer, 2 rows deep. I backed up until my legs hit my bumper. I could feel the metal hum from the idling engine through my jeans. My hand found the door handle. I pulled it shut, locked it, then sat down hard. I didn't even try to hide that my hands were shaking. I just turned the key and watched my headlights light up the path ahead. Something moved. 15 yards out, a shape crossed the beam. Crouched. Long. It slipped between the rows in one smooth motion and vanished again. That was enough. I put it in gear and eased out, slowly. The corn closed in again. My headlights illuminated the stalks as I crawled forward. At 30 yards, I heard a bang on the back door. Once, then again. I didn't stop. I just drove. When I hit the county road, I floored it until I saw sky again. Then I called dispatch. Tara was working nights. "Talk to me," she said, because I never call unless something's wrong. "There's another delivery truck out here," I said. "Engine's warm, door open, no driver." 2 sets of prints. I'm at County 600 near an unmarked field entrance. She went quiet for a second. "Stay in a lit area. I'll call county dispatch." I parked at a gas station 5 minutes away, the kind that glows like daylight. My reflection in the window looked pale, eyes wide. I retold everything for the sheriff's deputy over the phone. What I saw, where, when. He found the sign, found the field, found the rival van. No driver, no struggle. The coffee was still warm. He asked me to follow him back, park behind his cruiser while he checked. I did. Sitting there watching his flashlight sweep across that empty space felt like watching someone walk into a mouth that might close any second. He came back and tapped my window. No one inside, no phone, keys here, ignition on, driver's not nearby. 2 sets of prints, I said. "You'll see them in the dirt." "We'll handle it. You head back." I left the package on the seat, marked undeliverable, and drove until I hit the highway. Back at the hub, Tara shrugged. "Cornfields mess with satellites," she said. "You good?" I wasn't sure. I just said, "Yeah." Next morning, my supervisor asked for a report. He skimmed it, said, "Probably a prank. You did the right thing." He looked up. "Where's the package?" "In my bin. No safe drop." He nodded and tossed the report in a pile. 2 days later, we heard from county police. The rival truck driver had been found sleeping in the back of the van. He claimed he had just gone there to take a nap. And nobody, not the cops, not the carrier, wanted to say what that meant. The report came through as no crime, no theft, no missing person. Just a line about unverified signage and advise caution when approaching rural private roads. Corporate language for, let's forget this happened. I kept running nights. Habit, I guess. I like quiet work. But after that, I started checking every sign twice. If it didn't look official, I didn't follow it. That wasn't random. Whoever they were, they wanted to see who would show up. Every route looks normal in daylight, but out there in the dark, it's easy to mistake an open field for an open invitation. Because sometimes it isn't the delivery that's waiting for you. It's whoever painted the sign, standing just out of sight, listening to your tires crunch toward them, waiting to see if you'll come all the way in. If you're still thinking about those cornfield stories instead of sleeping, yeah, welcome to the club. Smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and tell me in the comments, would you ever walk through a cornfield after dark? And if you think fall is all pumpkin spice and cozy sweaters, you haven't watched this channel long enough. Click now to watch 4 disturbing fall horror stories, because comfort season has a dark side. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.